The nanny helped the billionaire's daughters to sleep, and he began to cry upon recognizing the song. The rain lashed against the windows of the Carter mansion. Nathan adjusted his tie and glanced at his watch. 11 o'clock at night. Another day had flown by, lost between meetings, contracts, and numbers that never stopped growing in his bank account. He walked down the marble hallway toward the bedroom. His footsteps echoed through the empty house, a sound that had become all too familiar. The mansion was imposing, luxurious, but cold. Nathan paused for a moment and looked at the expensive paintings on the walls. Everything perfect, everything expensive, everything empty. His twin daughters, Mia and Charlotte, were probably already asleep. He had barely seen them today. He'd left early, returned late, as always. The new nanny took care of everything, and that was enough. At least, that's what Nathan kept telling himself. It was then that he heard a soft voice coming from the girls' hallway. Nathan frowned. It was too late for them to be awake. He quickened his pace, concerned but the voice continued, calm and melodious. "It's okay, girls." It was the nanny, Hannah something. Nathan had barely spoken to her since the agency sent her over last week. She seemed competent, and that was sufficient. He didn't have time to chat with employees. "I'll sing for you." Nathan slowed his steps. Through the slightly ajar door, he saw Hannah sitting between the two small beds. Mia and Charlotte were lying down, their blonde hair spread across the pillows like sunbeams. The girls' light-colored eyes were fixed on the nanny, who began to sing a gentle melody. And then it happened. The song floated through the air and hit Nathan like a lightning bolt. He felt his heart pound in his chest. That melody. It couldn't be. His feet were glued to the floor. Hannah's voice echoed down the hall, but Nathan heard another voice mixed with hers, a sweeter, more distant voice and coming from a long, long time ago. Nathan placed a hand on the wall, trying to steady himself. The song continued, each note awakening memories he had kept locked away for years. Maggie. It was the song Margaret Parker used to sing to him when he was a child. The same melody, the same words whispered in the dark, the same tenderness in the voice. "It can't be," Nathan murmured, his voice coming out hoarse. He closed his eyes, and for an instant, he was no longer in the mansion's hallway. He was in a smaller, simpler room, with a gray-haired woman who rocked him to sleep every night. Maggie, the only person who had truly cared for him while his parents were always traveling. Nathan peeked through the crack in the door. Hannah kept singing, completely oblivious to the storm brewing in his mind. Mia yawned, her little eyes already heavy with sleep. Charlotte was hugging a teddy bear, also succumbing to the song. How was it possible? How did Hannah know that song? Had Maggie made it up especially for him? Or was it an old folk song Nathan had never heard anywhere else? All he knew was that the melody belonged to his most precious and most painful memories. He stepped away from the door silently, his heart still beating erratically. He walked to his own room like a sleepwalker, but sleep wouldn't come. Nathan lay in the dark, listening to the rain and reliving memories he preferred to keep buried. Maggie had come to the Carter house when Nathan was 5 years old. His parents traveled constantly, his father building a business empire, his mother accompanying him to social events. Nathan was a quiet, lonely child until Maggie arrived. She wasn't just a nanny. She was the one who made breakfast while humming, who helped with homework, who healed scraped knees with colorful band-aids. She was the one who stayed up when he had nightmares, who made up stories about dragons and castles, and who sang that song every single night without fail. Nathan got up and went to the window. The rain had lessened, but drops still slid down the glass. When was the last time he had thought of Maggie? When was the last time he had seen her? The memory came like a punch. He was 15. Maggie was packing her bags, her eyes red from crying. Nathan's parents said he no longer needed a nanny, that it was time to grow up. Nathan had protested, pleaded, but the decision was final. Maggie hugged him one last time, whispered that she would always remember him, and walked out the door, carrying an old suitcase and the broken heart of a 15-year-old boy. 22 years. It had been 22 years since he'd last seen her. Nathan went back to bed but couldn't sleep. How had that song reached Hannah? Could it be a coincidence? Impossible. The melody was unique, intimate, special. He spent the rest of the night awake, trying to understand. The rain continued outside, but Nathan barely heard it. His mind was trapped between the past and a present that suddenly seemed full of mysteries. When the sun finally broke through the clouds, Nathan was already dressed. He went down to the kitchen with a single certainty. He needed to find out the truth. But first, he observed the morning routine that happened without him. Hannah was preparing breakfast for the girls, who were laughing at something she had said. Mia and Charlotte seemed more at ease with the nanny than with their own father. Nathan felt a strange pang in his chest. When was the last time he had laughed with his daughters over breakfast? When was the last time he had been a part of their lives? He poured himself some coffee and sat at the table, watching. The twins greeted him with shy waves before returning to their lively conversation with Hannah. They talked about school, about friends, about things Nathan knew nothing about. Hannah seemed to know every detail of the girls' lives. She knew Mia preferred toast with jam, that Charlotte liked to draw during breakfast. Small details that Nathan, their father, was oblivious to. When the girls went upstairs to get ready for school, Nathan was left alone with Hannah in the kitchen. The moment had come. He had to ask the question that had tormented him all night. But before he could speak, Hannah smiled and asked, "Is everything all right, Mr. Carter? You seem worried." Nathan hesitated. Where should he start? How could he ask about a song without sounding crazy? How could he explain that a simple melody had unearthed 22 years of longing? He took a deep breath, feeling as though he was about to open a door he had kept shut for decades. The conversation that would change everything was about to begin. Nathan gripped his coffee cup tighter than necessary. The words had been on the tip of his tongue for hours, but he didn't know how to begin. Hannah continued tidying up the kitchen, humming softly the same melody from the night before. Every note she murmured was like a needle prick in Nathan's chest. The song had been echoing in his mind since he woke up, blending past and present in a confusing and painful way. "Hannah," he finally said, his voice coming out hoarser than usual. She turned around, smiling. Her smile was warm, genuine, the same kind of smile Maggie used to have. How had Nathan not noticed the resemblance before? "Yes, Mr. Carter. Last night, I heard you singing to the girls." Nathan paused, trying to sound casual, but he knew he wasn't succeeding. His fingers drummed nervously on the table. "Yeah, where did you learn that song?" Hannah's smile brightened even more. "Oh, you heard. I hope I didn't wake you. Sometimes the girls get a little restless at bedtime, especially on rainy nights like yesterday. A song always helps calm them down." Nathan shook his head quickly. "It didn't bother me," he lied. The song had bothered him deeply, but not in the way Hannah imagined. "It's just that it sounded familiar. Is it an old song?" Hannah stopped drying the dishes and leaned against the counter, her eyes taking on a nostalgic glint. "Actually, I don't know if it's old or not. My mother always sang that song to me when I was little. It's one of the first memories I have of her, you know. I must have been about 3, and whenever I had a nightmare or got sick, she would sing that song until I fell asleep." Nathan felt his stomach clench. 3 years old, the same age he was when he started having nightmares after his parents began traveling more. The same age Maggie started singing to him. "Your mother?" he asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Yes, she still sings it sometimes when she's feeling well." Hannah's eyes filled with affection and a hint of concern. "It's one of the few things she still remembers perfectly." "Actually," the words hit Nathan like little electric shocks. "Still remembers." That meant there were things she no longer remembered. He leaned forward unconsciously. "What do you mean by still remembers?" Hannah hesitated for a moment, as if deciding how much to reveal. "Mom has been having some memory problems for the last few years. Nothing too severe yet, but, well, some things get confusing for her sometimes." Nathan felt a pang of concern, though he didn't understand why he cared so much about a stranger. Or perhaps he knew exactly why. somewhere deep in his mind, that still resisted accepting the possibility. "Did she work as a nanny?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "For almost her entire adult life, Mom always had a special way with children. She used to say that God didn't give her children of her own because her destiny was to take care of other people's children." Hannah smiled tenderly, especially one very special child she cared for many years. "She always talks about him as if he were her own son." Nathan's heart began to beat faster. A special child. Yes. She worked for a wealthy family for 10 years, looking after a boy from when he was little until he was a teenager. From the way she tells it, it was the most important job of her life. Hannah chuckled softly. "Sometimes I get jealous, you know, of the way her eyes light up when she talks about him." Nathan swallowed hard. 10 years, wealthy family, a boy until his teens. Every detail fit perfectly with his own story. "What's your mother's name?" he asked, his voice nearly inaudible. "Margaret Parker, but everyone has always called her Maggie." The world stopped. Nathan felt as if someone had sucked all the air out of the kitchen. The blood roared in his ears, and for a moment he thought he might faint. The cup trembled violently in his hands, and he placed it on the table so carefully, it was as if he were handling a bomb. Margaret Parker. Maggie. It wasn't possible. It couldn't be the same person. But the song, the name, the age, the 10 years caring for a child, all the details fit together so perfectly that denying it would be ridiculous. "Mr. Carter?" Hannah's voice seemed to come from another world. "Are you all right? You've gone pale as a sheet." Nathan stared at her as if he were seeing her for the first time, truly seeing her. Her brown hair with golden highlights, just like Maggie's in her youth. Her gentle, light brown eyes, which always seemed to understand more than they said. The warm smile that made any child feel safe. How had he not noticed before? It was as if Maggie was standing right in front of him, 30 years younger. "Margaret Parker," he repeated slowly, testing each syllable as if it were a word in a foreign language. "Maggie Parker. Yes, do you know her?" Hannah tilted her head, curious, but there was something else in her eyes now, a spark of recognition, as if she too were piecing together a puzzle. "It would be an incredible coincidence if you did. Mom worked as a nanny for many years, mostly around here, but it was so long ago." Nathan stood up from the chair so abruptly that it scraped against the floor with a sharp sound. His legs were shaky, and he had to lean on the table for a moment. He walked to the kitchen window like a man in a trance, looking out at the garden without really seeing anything. The memories came like an avalanche. Maggie making his favorite breakfast, pancakes with maple syrup in the shape of Mickey Mouse, Maggie drying his tears after a nightmare, promising that the monsters didn't exist, Maggie teaching him how to tie his shoes, ride a bike, count to 100. Maggie singing that song every night without fail until he fell asleep. She took care of me," Nathan said, his back still to Hannah. His voice came out hoarse, laden with emotions he hadn't felt in decades. "When I was a child. For 10 years. The silence that followed was deafening. Nathan could hear his own heart beating, the ticking of the clock on the wall, the distant sound of cars on the street. Then, behind him, he heard a sharp intake of breath. "Oh my God," Hannah whispered. "You're Nathan." Nathan turned around slowly and saw Hannah with wide eyes, both hands covering her mouth. Tears were already beginning to form in her eyes. "Nathan Carter," she continued, her voice muffled by her hands. "You know who I am." Hannah dropped her hands and let out a laugh that was half sob, half joy. "Of course I know. How could I not? Mom talks about you practically every day. Nathan, the boy she raised. Nathan, who loved adventure stories and hated broccoli. Nathan, who was afraid of thunder and slept with a little blue teddy bear named Charlie." Nathan felt a violent tightness in his chest. Charlie. The blue teddy bear Maggie had given him for his 6th birthday, when she noticed he was afraid to sleep alone. He had slept with that bear until he was 12, hidden from his parents who thought it was too childish. "She remembers Charlie?" he asked, his voice almost inaudible. "Remembers him?" Hannah laughed through the tears that were now streaming freely down her face. "Nathan, she still has Charlie." "What?" "When you grew up and didn't need him anymore, she asked if she could keep the bear. She said it was to remember the special boy she raised. Charlie is on her bed to this day." Nathan had to lean against the window. Maggie had kept the teddy bear. For all these years, through decades of silence, she had kept a physical reminder of him. "Does she remember me?" he asked, though the answer was already obvious. "Remember you?" Hannah shook her head, incredulous. "Nathan, she never stopped talking about you. For all these years, you were always my boy. She has a picture of you on her bedside table, you know, the one you two took on your 10th birthday, in the garden of your parents' old house." Nathan remembered the photo perfectly. Maggie hugging him from behind, both of them smiling at the camera. He was holding a homemade chocolate cake she had made especially for him. It was one of the happiest days of his childhood. "I can't believe it," Hannah continued, approaching him. "When I saw the ad for a nanny for the Carter family, I thought the last name was just a coincidence. I never imagined." She paused, studying his face intently. "But now that I know who you are, it's impossible not to see it. You have the same eyes. Mom always said you had intelligent, calm but sad eyes." Nathan returned to the table and sat down heavily. 22 years of silence, of guilt, of suppressed longing. And now he discovered that Maggie had never forgotten him, that she spoke of him every day, that she had kept the teddy bear as if it were a treasure. "Why did she never look for me?" he asked, the pain transparent in his voice. Hannah sat in the chair next to him, her eyes full of understanding. "She wanted to, many times. But Mom always respected the boundaries employers set. When your parents let her go, they made it clear that you were no longer to have contact with the staff. But I was just a child. She knows that. That's why she never held a grudge against you. She always said you were an obedient child, that your parents must have forbidden any contact." Hannah touched Nathan's arm gently. "Mom never stopped rooting for you, you know. She follows your achievements in the newspapers, feels proud when she sees news about your business." Nathan closed his eyes, fighting back the emotion. Knowing that Maggie had watched over him from afar, that she was proud of him, was both comforting and devastating. "How is she?" he asked, though a part of him feared the answer. Hannah's smile faded. "She's not well, Nathan. Mom has Alzheimer's." The words hit Nathan like a hammer. Alzheimer's, the disease that stole memories, that erased entire lives. "How long?" "She was diagnosed 2 years ago, but the symptoms started before that. It's still in the early stages, thank God. Some days she's completely lucid, remembers everything. Other days she doesn't recognize me." Nathan felt his world collapse. Maggie, the woman with the sharpest memory he had ever known, was losing the very thing that defined her. "But does she still sing?" he asked, desperate. Hannah smiled through her tears. "Always. Music is one of the last things patients lose. She sings her favorite songs, and she always sings that lullaby, especially when she's agitated. It's like the music brings her back. The song she used to sing to me. The very same one. She says it's magic, that it always calmed her special boy." Hannah touched Nathan's arm. "She loves you very much, you know. Even with the disease, you are one of the strongest memories she has. On days when she doesn't recognize me, she still asks about Nathan." Nathan felt something break inside his chest. For all these years, he thought Maggie had forgotten him. To discover it was the exact opposite was devastating and comforting at the same time. "Where is she?" he asked, his voice choked with emotion. "She lives with me in a small apartment downtown. I had to quit my full-time job to take care of her until I got this position here." Nathan looked at Hannah with new understanding. She was working as a nanny not by choice but by necessity. She needed the money to care for Maggie. "Does she know you work here?" he asked. "She does. On good days, she gets very excited. She says it's a sign that the universe is conspiring to bring her family together." Hannah smiled shyly. "She always said that you and I were her children of the heart." The phrase struck Nathan like a bolt of lightning. Children of the heart. It was exactly the kind of thing Maggie would say. Hannah was silent for a moment, observing the emotions on Nathan's face. Then, gently, she asked the question that would change everything. "Do you want to see her?" Nathan felt his heart race. See Maggie. After 22 years of absence, after so many nights wondering how she was. Would she want to see me?" he asked, his voice full of insecurity. "Are you kidding?" Hannah laughed through her tears. "Nathan, it would be the greatest gift I could give her. On bad days, when she's confused, she asks for Nathan. She asks when you're going to visit, if you still like hot chocolate, if you're still afraid of thunder." Nathan felt his own tears threatening to overflow. Maggie remembered intimate details of his childhood. "Yes," he said without hesitation, his voice firm despite the emotion. "I want to see her. I need to see her." Hannah smiled, her whole face lighting up. "We can go this afternoon if you like. On Sundays she's usually more energetic, more lucid." "Today," Nathan repeated, his heart pounding. "Today I'm going to see Maggie." For the first time in 22 years, Nathan felt like he was about to go home. Not the luxurious mansion where he lived, but his true home. The arms of the woman who had raised him with love when he needed it most. The reunion was just a few hours away. The car stopped in front of a small apartment building downtown. Nathan looked out the window and felt his stomach clench. It was so different from the mansion where he grew up, so far from the luxury he had grown accustomed to. But something about this simple place made him feel more at home than his own house. Hannah got out first and waited for him on the sidewalk. "Are you ready?" she asked with an encouraging smile. Nathan nodded, though he didn't feel ready. How could anyone be ready for a moment like this? 22 years of distance couldn't be simply erased just because the time for the reunion had arrived. They walked up 2 flights of stairs in silence. Nathan noticed Hannah was carrying a grocery bag, probably things for Maggie. Her daughter's dedication was evident in every gesture, every bit of care. "She's having a rough day today," Hannah whispered as she fumbled for her keys. "This morning she didn't recognize me. She thought I was a stranger breaking into her house." Nathan felt his heart ache. "Maybe we should come back another day." "No, sometimes she gets better during the day. And even if she doesn't recognize you today, your presence might spark something in her. The doctors say that familiar stimuli sometimes help." The door opened with a soft click. The apartment was small but cozy. Nathan was immediately hit by a familiar scent, lavender and vanilla, the same perfume Maggie had always worn. For a moment, he was transported back to his childhood. "Mom," Hannah called out softly, "I brought a visitor." Nathan followed Hannah through the small living room. There were pictures on the walls, some old, some recent. His eyes fixed on a frame on the side table. It was the photo from his 10th birthday that Hannah had mentioned. There he was, 10 years old, smiling next to Maggie in his parents' garden. The emotion hit him like a wave. "She's over there," Hannah indicated with a nod of her head. Nathan looked in the direction she pointed and saw her. Maggie was sitting in a floral fabric armchair near the window. The afternoon light fell gently upon her, creating an almost ethereal aura around her. Nathan had to lean against the wall for a moment. She was older, of course. Her hair, once brown with streaks of gray, was now completely white and thinner. The hands that used to be firm and calloused looked frail, resting in her lap. The wrinkles told stories of smiles and worries accumulated over the years. But it was her. It was definitely Maggie. Nathan approached slowly, his heart beating so hard he feared she could hear it. Maggie was looking out the window with a distant expression, as if she were seeing something no one else could. "Maggie?" he said softly, his voice barely a whisper. She didn't react. She continued to look out the window, her hands moving slightly in her lap, as if playing a piano to a song only she could hear. "Mom!" Hannah approached and touched Maggie's shoulder affectionately. "Look who came to see you." Maggie turned slowly, her eyes still holding that gentle gleam Nathan remembered, but there was something different about them, a fog, a confusion that wasn't there before. She looked at Nathan with no sign of recognition. "Hello," she said politely, as she would to a stranger. "Are you a friend of Hannah's?" The words struck Nathan like a dagger. He had prepared himself for this possibility, but nothing could have prepared him for the reality of being treated as a stranger by the woman who had been his most important mother figure. "I am," Nathan managed to say, his voice hoarse. "I'm a friend of Hannah's." He sat in the chair next to Maggie's armchair, trying to control the emotions that threatened to overflow. Up close, he could see she still had that warm presence that had always characterized her. Even with the disease, even lost in her own world, there was something comforting about being near her. "How nice," Maggie smiled, and for a moment it was as if time hadn't passed, the same smile that had comforted him on 1,000 difficult nights. "Hannah is a special girl. She takes care of me, you know. Sometimes I don't remember things very well, but she's always patient." Nathan glanced at Hannah, who was standing in the doorway with tears in her eyes. It was both painful and beautiful to see how Maggie recognized love and care even when she couldn't identify people. "She really is special," Nathan agreed. Maggie studied him for a moment, her head tilted like a curious bird. "You have kind eyes," she said. "You remind me of someone." Nathan's heart leaped. "I do. Yes. A boy I used to know." He had eyes like that, kind but a little sad. Maggie frowned, trying to concentrate. What was his name again? It was a handsome name. Nathan leaned forward, hopeful. "Nathan," he suggested gently. Maggie smiled, but it was a vague smile. "Could be. My memory isn't what it used to be." She sighed and turned back to the window. "Sometimes I have dreams about that boy. I dream that I'm singing to him, that he's scared and needs to be held." Nathan felt a tear roll down his cheek. Maggie remembered, even if only in fragments. Somewhere in the mind, clouded by the disease, he still existed. Can I hold your hand?" he asked, his voice almost disappearing. Maggie looked at him with curiosity but extended her hand. "Of course, dear." Nathan held her hand gently. It was smaller than he remembered, more fragile, but it still carried the same warmth. He stayed like that for a few minutes, just holding Maggie's hand, trying to convey all the love and gratitude he felt. But she didn't react. There was no moment of recognition that he had hoped for. Maggie simply let him hold her hand, as she would with any kind person. "You're a good person," she said eventually. "I can feel it. Good people have warm hands." Nathan smiled through his tears. Even without recognizing him, Maggie could still see the good in people. Her essence remained intact, even if her memory was fading. They sat in silence for a few more minutes. Nathan watched Maggie's face, trying to memorize every detail. She was humming a soft melody, not the lullaby, but something equally sweet. Hannah finally approached. "I think she's getting tired," she whispered. "Maybe it's best." Nathan nodded, understanding. He released Maggie's hand carefully and stood up. "It was a pleasure to meet you," he said to Maggie, following the protocol of a first meeting. "Likewise, dear. Come back any time. Hannah is happy when she has visitors." Nathan said his goodbyes and walked to the door with Hannah. When he turned to look at Maggie one last time, she had already returned to gazing out the window, lost in her own thoughts. Outside the apartment, Nathan finally let the tears flow freely. Hannah hugged him without saying a word, perfectly understanding the pain he was feeling. The reunion had happened, but not in the way he had dreamed. Maggie was alive. She was being cared for with love. But the Nathan she had raised existed only in fragments of a memory that was dissolving day by day. It was both a meeting and a farewell, and Nathan knew he couldn't just walk away and pretend nothing had happened. Maggie needed him now, perhaps more than ever. Even if she didn't remember who he was, he remembered perfectly who she had been to him. It was time to return the love he had received, even if it was too late for her to know how much she meant to him. The drive home was a blur in Nathan's mind. He drove on autopilot. The image of Maggie looking at him without recognition still searing his thoughts. The traffic light turned red and he stopped, his hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Maggie hadn't recognized him. The woman who had been his emotional anchor during his childhood had treated him like a complete stranger, and Nathan knew he deserved it. 22 years of silence, 22 years without a phone call, a visit, not even a letter. When he finally pulled into the mansion's garage, he sat in the car for a few minutes, trying to process everything that had happened. The house was silent when he entered. Hannah was probably giving the girls their bath or preparing dinner. Nathan went straight up to his room and sat on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. The afternoon had been both a reunion and a farewell. Maggie was there, alive, but at the same time lost in a world where he didn't exist. The frail hands that had once comforted him did not recognize his touch. The eyes that had always shone when they saw him now saw him as a kind stranger. Nathan stood up and went to the window. Down below, he could see the garden where he had played as a child. The same garden where Maggie had taught him to ride a bike, holding the back of the seat while he pedaled, trembling with fear and excitement. The same spot where they had impromptu picnics on Saturday afternoons, when she would spread a blanket on the grass and bring sandwiches cut into star shapes. The memories came in a cascade, more vivid now after seeing her. Maggie waking up early to make his favorite breakfast, pancakes with maple syrup that she would use to draw a smiley face on his plate. Maggie waiting for him on the porch every day after school, with a glass of cold milk and cookies still warm from the oven. Maggie sitting on the edge of his bed during thunderstorms, singing that song until he fell asleep, even when she was exhausted after a full day of running the house. Nathan closed his eyes and could almost feel her hand stroking his hair, hear her soft voice promising that everything would be okay. "Don't be afraid, my boy. Mama Maggie is here," she used to say when he woke up from nightmares. And she always was, always. Maggie was never too busy for him. She never said she had more important things to do. When he cut his knee, she dropped everything to clean the wound and apply a colorful band-aid. When he came home from school upset because someone had been mean, she would sit with him in the kitchen and let him tell her everything while she prepared his favorite snack. She was simply there, always present, always available. Unlike his own parents. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. His parents were exactly like he was now with Mia and Charlotte. Always busy, always with more important priorities, always leaving the childcare to other people. Nathan remembered perfectly trying to tell his father about something that happened at school, only to hear, "Later, Nathan, I'm on the phone." He remembered his mother canceling promises to go to the park because a more important social engagement had come up. He remembered silent dinners where his parents discussed mergers and acquisitions while he ate alone, invisible at his own table. And now he was doing the exact same thing to his own daughters. Nathan sat down heavily in the armchair in his room, the weight of the discovery crushing him. When was the last time he had truly talked to Mia and Charlotte? Not about practical things like schedules or appointments, but really talked. When was the last time he had asked how their day at school was, what they were learning, if they had made new friends? When was the last time he had put them to bed, read them a story, participated in their lives in a meaningful way? The answer was painful. He couldn't remember a single time. The twins were practically strangers to him. He knew they had blonde hair and light-colored eyes like their late mother, that Charlotte was quieter than her sister, but it stopped there. He didn't know their favorite subjects in school, which toys they preferred, what kind of books they liked, what they dreamed of when they went to sleep. Hannah knew all of that. Hannah knew every detail of their lives, every preference, every fear, every joy. She was to Mia and Charlotte what Maggie had been to him, the constant, caring, ever-present figure. the person who really mattered in their day-to-day lives. Nathan felt a wave of shame and sadness so intense he had trouble breathing. He had become the very thing he had silently criticized his own parents for throughout his childhood. A successful businessman, respected professionally, but a failure as a father. A man who provided material luxury in abundance, but offered no emotional presence. Maggie would have been deeply disappointed in him. Not for his financial success, she had always been proud of his achievements, but for the way he was neglecting his own daughters, repeating the vicious cycle of emotional absence that had hurt him so much as a child. A sound of laughter from downstairs interrupted his dark thoughts. Nathan got up and walked to the bedroom door. The voices of Mia and Charlotte echoed down the hall, mixed with Hannah's. They were having fun, sharing everyday moments that he didn't even know existed in his own home. Nathan went down the stairs silently and stopped at the kitchen entrance, observing a scene that should have been familiar but that he rarely witnessed. Hannah was preparing dinner while the girls sat at the table doing some kind of school activity. Mia was showing a colorful drawing to her sister, who applauded enthusiastically. "Look, Hannah, I drew our family," Mia said proudly, holding up the paper to show it better. Nathan discreetly moved closer to get a better look. In the crayon drawing there were 3 figures, 2 small girls with hair as yellow as the sun, and a brunette woman in a blue dress. Hannah was in the center of the composition, holding the hands of the 2 girls. All 3 had huge smiles drawn on their faces. He was not in the drawing. The realization was like a cold stab to the chest. To his own daughters, the family consisted of the 2 of them and Hannah. He was just a distant figure, someone who showed up at the house occasionally, but was not part of the real core, the day-to-day, the things that truly mattered. "It's beautiful, sweetie," Hannah praised. But Nathan noticed a quick glance in his direction. She had noticed his absence too. "Daddy's home," Charlotte suddenly shouted, noticing Nathan standing in the kitchen entrance. Both girls turned to him at the same time, their light eyes shining with a mix of genuine joy and shyness. It was as if they were happy to see him, but didn't quite know how to react or what to expect from him. "Aye, girls," Nathan said, his voice coming out hoarser than he intended. "Do you want to see my drawing, Daddy?" Mia asked, holding out the paper with pride and hope. Nathan approached and took the drawing carefully. "It's very beautiful. You 2 are very talented artists." Mia beamed at the compliment, but Nathan noticed she didn't ask why he wasn't included in the family drawing. To her, it was completely natural that the family was just her, Charlotte, and Hannah. "Dinner is almost ready," Hannah said softly. "Mr. Carter, will you be joining us for dinner tonight?" The question caught him completely by surprise. When was the last time he had dinner at home with his daughters? He usually got home too late, after they had already eaten, or he would grab a quick bite at the office before going straight up to his room. "Yes, I will," he replied, and saw the girls' eyes light up as if he had just promised to take them to Disney World. During dinner, Nathan felt like an awkward visitor in his own home. Mia and Charlotte chatted excitedly with Hannah about school, classmates, their new teacher, and plans for weekend activities. They had a rich world full of details that Nathan knew nothing about. The girls only included Nathan in the conversation when Hannah directly encouraged them. "Daddy, the teacher said we're going to have a special performance at school next week," Charlotte said shyly. "How interesting. What's the performance about?" "We're going to sing a song about the 4 seasons. Each child will represent a different season. I'm going to be spring," she said with a shy but proud smile. "And I'm going to be summer," Mia added excitedly. "I'm going to wear a yellow outfit and hold a cardboard sun." Nathan smiled, feeling a pang of regret for knowing so little about their lives. "I'm sure you'll both do great." "It's going to be a beautiful performance. Are you going to watch?" Mia asked, her voice full of hope but also uncertainty. The question caught Nathan completely off guard. When was the last time he had attended any of his daughters' school activities? Probably never. There were always important meetings, urgent calls, contracts that couldn't wait. "Of course I will," he said without hesitation, and saw both their faces light up. After dinner, Nathan surprised everyone by not going straight up to his office as he always did. Instead, he stayed in the living room, watching Hannah organize the girls' things. When they came downstairs in their pajamas after their bath, he was still there. "Daddy, will you read us a story tonight?" Charlotte asked, her voice full of cautious hope. Nathan looked at Hannah, who nodded encouragingly. "Of course. Pick a book you like." The girls ran to their room and came back arguing over which book to bring. They settled on a volume of fairy tales with colorful illustrations. Nathan sat on the large living room sofa, and they snuggled up on either side of him, naturally. It was the first time in a long time they had been so physically close. Nathan could smell the baby shampoo in their hair, the softness of their cotton pajamas. He began to read the story of a brave princess, and gradually felt the girls relax completely against him. Mia rested her head on his shoulder, while Charlotte held his free arm. The warmth of their small bodies against his awakened something Nathan hadn't felt in years: genuine paternal love, instinctive protection, the deep desire to be the hero in their lives, not just the man who signed checks to pay the bills. "Daddy, can you sing to us like Hannah always does?" Mia asked sleepily when he finished the story. Nathan hesitated, feeling completely out of his comfort zone. He didn't know any lullabies, didn't have the soft, melodious voice of Hannah or Maggie, but looking at his daughters' hopeful little faces, he knew he had to try. "I don't know many appropriate songs," he admitted honestly. "Hannah can teach you," Charlotte suggested simply. Hannah, who had been watching the scene from the doorway with an emotional smile, came closer. "How about we all sing together? I know a very simple song about stars." She began to sing a sweet melody about stars that shone in the sky to protect children during the night. Nathan tried to follow along, and although his voice was hesitant and off-key, the girls seemed to love it. They sang along, creating an imperfect but truly loving harmony. When they finished, Nathan felt fundamentally different, as if something inside him had opened up after being locked away for years. "Now it's really time for bed," Hannah said softly. Nathan carried Charlotte in his arms to the girls' room, while Mia followed alongside, holding his free hand. He tucked them carefully into their beds, kissed their soft foreheads and whispered, "Good night, princesses," just as Maggie used to do with him. "Daddy," Mia called out as he was almost leaving the room. "Yes, sweetie. Will you be here tomorrow morning when we wake up?" The simple question broke his heart. His own daughters weren't sure if he would be present in the morning. What kind of father had he become? "I'll be here when you wake up," he promised solemnly, "and we'll have breakfast together." In the hallway, Hannah was waiting for him with tears in her eyes. "That was very beautiful to witness," she said simply. "I've been a terrible father until now," Nathan admitted, his voice laden with genuine guilt and regret. "You've been an absent father, but you can change that starting now. They're still little. There's still plenty of time to build a real relationship." Nathan nodded with determination. "I want to change everything. I need to change. Maggie didn't recognize me today, but if she could recognize me and knew what kind of father I've been, she would be deeply disappointed in me." "Maggie would be proud to see you wanting to be a better father," Hannah corrected gently. So she always believed that people could change when they really wanted to. That night, Nathan went to bed with a firm resolution etched in his heart. He couldn't go back in time and be the present son Maggie deserved, but he could be the dedicated father Mia and Charlotte needed. The next morning, he went down to the kitchen before the girls woke up. He made pancakes from scratch, not as perfect as Maggie's, but made with genuine love. When Mia and Charlotte appeared in the kitchen, still sleepy, they found their father sitting at the table with a real smile. "Good morning, princesses," he said, and saw the pure surprise and joy in their eyes. Over the following weeks, Nathan completely reorganized his life's routine. He religiously came home in time for dinner, actively participated in conversations, asked questions about school and friends. He began to get to know his daughters, distinct personalities, Mia was outgoing and naturally artistic, always making up elaborate stories. Charlotte was more reserved and observant, but had a sharp intelligence and asked surprisingly deep questions. He read stories every night without fail, patiently helped with homework, played in the garden on weekends. Gradually, the girls began to seek him out spontaneously. They would come running to show him new drawings, tell him about things that happened at school, ask for advice on small conflicts with friends. Hannah watched the transformation with quiet joy. Nathan was becoming visibly more patient, more caring, more genuinely present. He was learning firsthand that being a father wasn't just about providing financially, but about being emotionally available. "The girls are completely different," Hannah commented one evening after Nathan had put the twins to bed. "Different how?" "Happier, more self-confident. They know now that you love them and genuinely care about them." Nathan smiled with real satisfaction. "Maggie always said that children need to feel they are someone's priority in life. I want Mia and Charlotte to feel every day that they are my absolute priority." The change was neither easy nor automatic. There were challenging days when Nathan had to choose between a potentially lucrative meeting and Charlotte's school performance. Days when he had to leave the office in the middle of important negotiations to help Mia with a science project. But every time he made these conscious choices, he remembered how he felt when his own parents always chose work over him. And every time he saw his daughter's radiant smiles, every spontaneous hug, every "I love you, Daddy," whispered before bed, Nathan knew with absolute certainty that he was making the right choice. Maggie might not remember him anymore, but the unconditional love she had given him in childhood was finally being passed on to the next generation. And that, Nathan knew in his heart of hearts, was exactly what she would have wanted above all else. On the Monday following his first meeting with Maggie, Nathan arrived at the office with a determination his employees rarely saw. He cancelled 3 meetings, postponed 2 important calls, and asked his assistant to research the best Alzheimer's specialists in the region. "I need a complete list," he told Jennifer, his assistant of 10 years. "Neurologists, geriatricians, specialized therapists. I want the best professionals available." Jennifer frowned, surprised. Nathan had never shown an interest in medical matters before. "Is this for a friend, Mr. Carter?" "It's for family," he replied simply. Within 2 hours, Nathan had a list of 15 renowned professionals on his desk. He started making calls immediately. The first appointment was scheduled for the following Thursday, the second for Friday. He didn't want to waste any time. When he called Hannah that afternoon, his voice carried a controlled urgency. "Hannah, I need to talk to you about your mother. Can I stop by after work?" "Of course, Mr. Carter. Did something happen?" "No, nothing serious. I want to help. I really do." When Nathan arrived at the small apartment, he found Maggie in the same armchair as his first visit. She looked at him with the same vacant expression, but smiled politely. "Hello, dear. Did you come to visit Hannah?" "I came to visit you both," Nathan replied, sitting down beside her. Hannah served tea, and Nathan got straight to the point. "I want to cover all of your mother's treatment, doctor's appointments, therapies, medications, everything she needs." Hannah nearly dropped her cup. "Mr. Carter, I can't accept that." "It's very generous, but—" "It's not generosity," Nathan interrupted her. "It's responsibility. Maggie took care of me for 10 years. Now it's my turn to take care of her. But the costs can be very high. Alzheimer's treatment—" "Hannah, money is not an issue. What is an issue is knowing she isn't receiving the best possible care because we lack the resources." Nathan leaned forward. "I've already scheduled appointments with 2 specialists for this week. I want her to be evaluated by a full team." Hannah looked at her mother, who was watching the conversation without fully understanding what was happening. "Mom, Nathan wants to help with your medicine and doctors." Maggie smiled vaguely. "How kind. Nathan is a handsome name." The comment hit Nathan as it always did, but he was getting used to it. "I'll arrange everything. Transportation to the appointments, an escort if necessary. You just need to keep me informed of the schedules." "Why are you doing this?" Hannah asked, her eyes welling up. "Because I should have done it a long time ago." From that week on, Maggie's life changed completely. Nathan hired the best doctors, occupational therapists, physical therapists. He ensured she had access to the most modern medications, specialized supplements, anything that could slow the progression of the disease. But more important than the money, Nathan started visiting Maggie 3 times a week. During the first few visits, she rarely recognized him. Sometimes she treated him as a polite stranger, other times as her daughter's friend. There were days when she became agitated by his presence, asking Hannah who this man was and why he was there. Nathan learned to be patient. He would sit beside her, talk about simple things, sometimes just sit in silence while she looked out the window. He discovered that Maggie responded well to music, so he started bringing CDs of old songs she used to like. "She seems calmer when you're here," Hannah commented after a week of regular visits, "even if she doesn't recognize me." Even so, it's as if some part of her remembers you, even if her conscious mind can't access it. Nathan started bringing flowers for Maggie, always white daisies, which he remembered were her favorite. She was happy with the flowers but never remembered who had brought them. Still, Nathan kept bringing them. The visits became an essential part of his routine. He would arrive at the apartment at 6 in the evening, 3 times a week, religiously. Some days Maggie was lucid and they would chat about general things. Other days she was confused, and he would simply stay nearby, a constant and comforting presence. "You have kind eyes," she said on a Thursday afternoon. "You remind me of someone I loved very much." "Who?" Nathan asked, his heart racing. "I don't know anymore. My memory isn't the same." She sighed. "But they were eyes like yours. Eyes that made me feel safe." Nathan held her hand gently. "You're safe now too." "Yes, I can feel that." During these months of constant visits, Nathan noticed changes in himself. The patience he developed with Maggie was reflected at home with his daughters. The empathy that grew from dealing with the frustration of her illness made him more sensitive to Mia and Charlotte's needs. "Daddy, why do you visit that lady?" Mia asked one night at dinner. "Because she took care of me when I was little, just like Hannah takes care of you. And she's sick." "She is. She has a sickness that makes her forget things." Charlotte frowned, worried. "Did she forget you?" Nathan hesitated. "Sometimes she does, sometimes she doesn't, but I haven't forgotten her, and that's why I need to visit her." "Can I meet her?" Mia asked. Nathan looked at Hannah, who nodded encouragingly. "Maybe one day." That day came on a quiet Saturday afternoon. Nathan had visited Maggie alone in the morning and found her particularly confused. She hadn't recognized him, became agitated, and asked Hannah several times who the strange man in her house was. Nathan returned home disheartened. It was one of the toughest days. He sat in the garden watching Mia and Charlotte play when Hannah approached. "Mr. Carter, how about we take the girls to meet Mom? Sometimes children have a calming effect on Alzheimer's patients." Nathan considered the proposal. "Do you think it would be good for her?" "I think it would be good for all of you." An hour later, Nathan was back at Maggie's apartment, this time accompanied by his daughters. Mia was holding a drawing she had made especially for the visit, while Charlotte carried a small bouquet of flowers from the garden. Maggie was sitting in her usual armchair, looking out the window. When she heard voices in the living room, she turned with curiosity. "Hannah, did you bring visitors?" "Yes, Mom. Remember Nathan?" "And these are his daughters, Mia and Charlotte." Maggie looked at Nathan without recognition, but her face lit up when she saw the girls. "How lovely. Look at that golden hair, like rays of sunshine." The twins approached shyly. Mia held out the drawing. "I made this for you." Maggie took the paper carefully. It was a drawing of a colorful house with a happy family in front. "What a talent." "Thank you, dear." Nathan sat in a nearby chair, observing the interaction. There was something magical about the way Maggie responded to children, even on her most difficult days. "How old are you?" Maggie asked. 7, they both answered in unison. 7 years old. What a special age. I once knew a boy who was 7. He was very special to me. Nathan felt his heart clench. Even lost in the confusion of the disease, some part of Maggie remembered him. It was then that something extraordinary happened. Maggie began to hum softly, looking at the girls with affection. It was a familiar melody that sent shivers down Nathan's spine. "Sleep, my darling, close your eyes." It was the song, the lullaby she used to sing to him. Nathan rose from his chair, his heart pounding. Maggie continued to sing, her eyes closed, lost in the music. "The stars are dancing in the skies." He approached slowly, almost holding his breath. The words came from Maggie's lips with a clarity she hadn't had in months. "Dare so dream of places far away, where children laugh and always play." Nathan knelt beside the armchair, his voice choked with emotion. "It's me, Maggie," he said softly. "It's Nathan." Maggie stopped singing abruptly. She opened her eyes and looked directly at him. For a moment that felt like an eternity, she studied his face with growing attention. Then, as if a fog had lifted, her eyes lit up with deep and genuine recognition. "My boy," she whispered, her face transforming into a radiant smile. "How you've grown." Nathan felt tears stream down his face. "Maggie, I've missed you so much." She extended her arms and they embraced tightly. 22 years of longing concentrated in that moment. Nathan smelled the familiar scent of lavender, the warmth of the hands that had comforted him so many times. "I thought I'd never see you again," Maggie murmured, stroking his hair as she did when he was a child. "I should have come sooner. Forgive me." "There's nothing to forgive, my love. You're here now." They held each other for long minutes, until Nathan remembered his daughter's presence. He gently pulled away from Maggie and motioned for Mia and Charlotte to come closer. "Maggie, I want you to meet my daughters, Mia and Charlotte." Maggie looked at the girls with eyes shining with joy. "Your daughters?" "Oh, Nathan, they're perfect." The twins approached with less shyness now. Maggie extended her hands and gently touched their faces, one at a time. "You have your daddy's eyes," she said tenderly. "And you're as beautiful as he was when he was little." "You know our daddy?" Charlotte asked. Maggie laughed, a sweet sound Nathan hadn't heard in decades. "Know him?" "I raised him, dear. I was like a second mother to him." "Like Hannah is to us?" Mia asked. "Exactly like Hannah is to you." Nathan watched the scene with his heart overflowing. Maggie stroked the girls' hand hair, talked to them about school, about toys, about their lives. The twins responded naturally, as if they had known her for a long time. "Daddy, can she come to our house for dinner?" Charlotte asked suddenly. Nathan looked at Hannah, who smiled through her tears. "Of course she can," he replied. "Whenever she wants." Maggie held Mia's and Charlotte's hands, one in each of hers. "Would you like me to sing for you?" "Yes," they both answered excitedly. And there, on that sunny afternoon, Maggie sang the lullaby that had comforted Nathan in his childhood to his granddaughters. Her voice was more fragile, but the melody was the same, filled with the same unconditional love. When she finished, Nathan felt complete in a way he hadn't experienced in decades. His family was together, Maggie, him, his daughters. The circle of love was finally closed. "I will treasure this moment forever," Maggie said, looking at everyone with affection. Nathan held her hand. "Me too, Maggie." "Me too." Maggie's apartment was completely transformed after that magical afternoon of recognition, where there was once silence and melancholy, now echoed with children's laughter and lively conversations. Nathan kept his promise to bring the girls to visit her regularly, and these visits became the most anticipated moments of the week for everyone. "Grandma Maggie!" Mia would shout whenever they arrived, running to throw herself into the arms of the woman who had quickly won a special place in the twins' hearts. "So my princesses have arrived," Maggie would reply, her eyes shining with a vibrancy Nathan hadn't seen in decades. It was amazing how the girls' presence awakened something deep within Maggie. On the days they came to visit, she would wake up earlier, get ready with care, and anxiously await their arrival. Hannah had told Nathan that her mother would spend the entire morning preparing little surprises, colorful drawings, made-up stories, new songs she had remembered during the night. "Look what I brought for you today," Maggie said on a Thursday afternoon, showing them two small origami birds made from colored paper. "I learned how to make these when I was young. Each bird carries a special wish." Charlotte took hers carefully, as if it were made of crystal. "What wish does mine carry, Grandma?" "The wish that you will always be curious and ask many intelligent questions," Maggie replied, stroking the girl's blonde hair. "And mine?" Mia asked eagerly. "Yours carries the wish that your creativity will never end and that you will always find beauty in the world." Nathan watched these interactions from the sofa. His heart warmed. Maggie had a special way of making each child feel unique and special. It was the same gift she had shown with him decades ago. The visits always followed a comforting ritual. First, the girls would talk about school, their friends, the week's mischief. Maggie listened to everything with genuine attention, asking questions and offering advice with the simple wisdom that had always characterized her. "Grandma, Sarah from my class said my drawing was ugly," Charlotte recounted one afternoon, her voice filled with sadness. Maggie held the girl's face gently. "Sweetheart, art isn't about pleasing other people. It's about expressing what's in your heart. If you liked your drawing, then it's perfect." But she laughed at me. "Sometimes people laugh when they don't understand something beautiful. That says more about them than it does about you." Maggie smiled. "Your daddy used to draw when he was little too, and do you know what I did with all of his drawings?" "What?" "I kept every single one as if it were a treasure, because they were treasures, just like yours are." Nathan felt a tightness in his chest. Had Maggie really kept his childhood drawings? More proof of the unconditional love she had always had for him. After the conversations came everyone's favorite part, the stories. Maggie had an inexhaustible repertoire of tales, some that Nathan remembered from his childhood, others that she seemed to invent on the spot. The girls would sit on the floor at the foot of her armchair, completely absorbed in the adventures Maggie created with her expressive voice. Once upon a time, there was a princess who didn't live in a castle, but in a simple little house in the forest, Maggie began one afternoon. She didn't have silk dresses or golden crowns, but she had something much more valuable. "What?" the two asked in unison. "A heart that could see the magic in all the small and simple things in life." Nathan smiled. It was typical of Maggie to turn a simple story into a lesson about finding happiness in everyday things. The afternoons always ended with music. Maggie would sing to the girls, sometimes traditional songs, other times melodies she made up on the spot. Mia and Charlotte quickly learned the special lullaby and now sang along with her, creating a sweet harmony that filled the apartment with joy. Hannah watched everything with eyes misty with gratitude. "I haven't seen my mother this well in many years," she confessed to Nathan one afternoon, as the girls helped Maggie water the plants on the balcony. "She seems like a completely different person," Nathan agreed. "Not different. She's back to being who she always was." Hannah wiped away a tear. "For the last few years, as the disease progressed, I was losing my mother little by little. But now, it's like she's come back. At least in part." Nathan watched Maggie teaching Charlotte how to care for a small violet in a pot. "The girls are good for her." "You all are good for her," Hannah corrected. "You, the girls, this family you've created together. Mom has a purpose now. She has people to love and care for again." It was true. Maggie flourished in the company of the family Nathan had brought to her. On the days of their visits, her symptoms seemed less severe. She remembered more things, was less confused, and smiled constantly. "Nathan," she called to him one afternoon, while the girls were playing with building blocks he had brought. "Yes, Maggie. Thank you for bringing your daughters to me. They remind me why it's worth waking up every morning." Nathan held her hand. "Thank you for welcoming them with so much love." They love you. And I love them, just like I loved you. Maggie smiled. You're my real family, you know that. You're our family too. At that moment, Nathan realized he was fulfilling much more than an old promise or paying a debt of gratitude. He was building something completely new and precious, a home that transcended walls and addresses, a home made of love, presence, and shared moments. Daddy, can I ask a question? Mia approached, interrupting his thoughts. Of course, Princess. Can Grandma Maggie come live with us? That way she'd always be close by. Nathan looked at Hannah, then at Maggie, who was watching the conversation with interest. The idea wasn't absurd. The mansion had plenty of space, and Maggie would certainly receive even better care. That's an interesting idea, he said carefully. Let's talk about it. Maggie smiled, her eyes shining. Wherever you are, I will feel at home. Charlotte joined the group. Grandma, if you come live with us, can you sing to us every night? Every night, my dear, and every morning too, if you'd like. Nathan felt his heart overflow with joy. For the first time in his adult life, he truly understood the meaning of the word family. It wasn't about blood ties or social obligations. It was about choosing to love, to be present, to create precious memories together. And looking at a laughing Maggie surrounded by his daughters, Nathan knew he had finally found his true home. 3 months after the emotional reunion with Maggie, Nathan barely recognized the man he had been before. The transformation didn't happen overnight, but it was profound and lasting. It was as if finding Maggie again had unlocked a part of him that had been dormant for decades. Every morning, Nathan woke up with a different purpose. It was no longer just about closing deals or increasing profits. It was about being present for the people who truly mattered in his life. Good morning, princesses, he said on a Tuesday morning, coming down to the kitchen where Mia and Charlotte were having breakfast. Daddy, you're awake early again, Mia exclaimed, running to hug him. Of course I am. I can't miss the best part of the day with you two. Hannah watched from the counter with a smile. The change in Nathan was remarkable. He was not only physically present, but emotionally engaged in every moment with his daughters. Daddy, can you help me with my math homework today? Charlotte asked shyly. Of course I can. We'll solve it together after school. And he did. Every afternoon, Nathan set aside time to sit with the girls and help them with their schoolwork. He discovered that Mia had a knack for arts and languages, while Charlotte shone in science and math. Every discovery about his daughters' personalities delighted him. Daddy, why is 9 times 8 72? Charlotte asked one afternoon, leaning over her math notebook. Nathan laughed. Good question. Let's think about it a different way. He grabbed some colored blocks and began to assemble groups, explaining multiplication visually. Charlotte's eyes lit up when she finally understood the concept. Now it makes sense, she said excitedly. You're very smart, Charlotte. You just needed a different explanation. Nathan discovered that teaching his daughters was one of the most rewarding experiences he'd ever had. Seeing the exact moment they understood something new, witnessing the joy of discovery, made his heart swell with paternal pride. The first school performance Nathan attended was a milestone in his transformation. Charlotte had been nervous for days, rehearsing her lines about the seasons. What if I forget my words, Daddy? She asked on the morning of the performance. Then you improvise. The important thing is to have fun and show what you've learned. Will you be there? In the front row, cheering for you. And Nathan cancelled an important meeting to be at the school. When Charlotte stepped onto the small stage dressed as Spring, he felt an emotion he couldn't describe. Watching her overcome her shyness and speak confidently about her favorite season was one of the proudest moments of his life. Daddy, did you see me? Charlotte ran to him after the performance. I saw every second. You were amazing. The hug she gave him was worth more than any multi-million-dollar contract he had ever signed. The changes extended beyond school activities. Nathan began to create family traditions that had never existed before. Saturday mornings became special pancake days, where each of the girls chose a different shape. Stars for Mia, hearts for Charlotte. "Daddy, can you teach Grandma Maggie how to make pancakes?" Mia suggested one Saturday. "That's a great idea. Let's make a special breakfast for her next Sunday." Nathan also instituted story nights, where each of his daughters would choose a book, and they would read together on the living room sofa. He found that Mia loved modern fairy tales, while Charlotte preferred books about animals and nature. "Daddy, can you make up a story about us?" Charlotte asked one night. "About us?" "Yes, about a family that finds a special grandma and becomes even happier." Nathan smiled, his heart warmed. Once upon a time, there was a daddy who thought that working a lot was the way to love his daughters. The story he invented that night became one of the girls' favorites, and they asked him to tell it over and over again. Weekends were dedicated to visiting Maggie, which had now become full family events. Nathan realized how these visits changed him. Seeing Maggie interact with his daughters, observing her patience with her occasional forgetfulness, the way she found joy in simple moments, all of it taught him about what truly mattered in life. "Nathan, you're different," Maggie said one afternoon, as the girls played in the small garden of the apartment building. "How so?" "More present, more at peace with yourself." Nathan reflected on her words. "You taught me that, Maggie, when I was a child, and now again. I only showed you what was already inside you. The changes were also visible at work." Nathan delegated more responsibilities, established clear boundaries between his professional and personal life, and discovered that his company ran perfectly well without him micromanaging every detail. "Mr. Carter, can the meeting with the investors be rescheduled?" his assistant asked one afternoon. "Why? It's Thursday. Isn't that the day you visit your family?" Nathan smiled. Even his team had gotten used to his new priorities. "Yes, reschedule it. Family comes first." One evening, after putting the girls to bed, Nathan sat on the back porch, reflecting on his journey. Hannah joined him with 2 cups of tea. "Can I ask you a personal question?" she said. "Of course. Do you feel like you've lost something by changing your routine so much, by dedicating less time to work?" Nathan considered the question carefully. "I thought I would at first, but actually, I've found that I've gained everything. I've truly gained my daughters. I've gained moments that are priceless. I've gained a family. Do the girls know how much you've changed for them? I hope one day they'll understand, but the truth is, I changed for myself too. Maggie showed me the kind of man I wanted to be, the kind of father I could be." Hannah smiled. "Mom would be proud to see who you've become." Nathan looked up at the starry sky. "I've become the man she always believed I could be. More sensitive, more present, more capable of loving without reservation." That night, as he went to sleep, Nathan realized that for the first time in his adult life, he felt whole. Not because he had money or professional success, but because he had love, connection, and purpose. He had become the father his daughters deserved, and the man he was always meant to be. And that, Nathan knew, was the greatest success of his life. The first weekend Maggie spent at the Carter mansion marked the beginning of a new era for the whole family. Nathan had spent weeks preparing everything down to the smallest detail. He hired an on-call nurse, adapted one of the ground floor rooms for her ease of movement, and ensured all her medications were organized. "Are you sure it won't be too much work?" Hannah asked on Friday afternoon, as she packed her mother's small bag. "Hannah, this house is finally going to be used for what it was built for, to house a family," Nathan replied, carrying the bag to the car. "Maggie isn't work. She's a gift." The change in the mansion was immediate and palpable. The house that for years had only echoed with lonely footsteps and formal conversations now vibrated with a completely different energy. Maggie brought with her something that money could never buy: genuine human warmth. "My, what a big house!" Maggie exclaimed as she first entered the main hall, her eyes shining with curiosity. "Nathan, you live in a palace." "Now we live in a palace," he corrected with a warm smile. Mia and Charlotte ran to show Grandma Maggie every room, competing to see who could explain each detail better. The house came alive through their eyes, which saw everything with the enthusiasm of someone sharing their world with someone special. "And this is our room," Charlotte announced, opening the door with pride. "Dad, do you want to see our toys?" "Of course I do, dear. I want to see every corner of this wonderful house." Nathan watched the scenes from the hallway, his heart warmed by a happiness he hadn't known in decades. Maggie had a natural gift for transforming any space simply by being present. The first Saturday morning of the new routine was special. Nathan woke up at 7, as he always did on weekends now, but this time he had an ambitious plan. He went down to the kitchen, determined to prepare a breakfast worthy of the occasion. "Can I help?" Hannah appeared in the kitchen as he was laying out ingredients on the counter. "I'm cooking today," Nathan said with determination, tying on an apron. "I want to make something special for her." Nathan had learned to cook in recent months, initially so he could make Saturday pancakes with his daughters. What started as a practical necessity had turned into an unexpected passion. He prepared creamy scrambled eggs, seasoned with fresh herbs from the garden, golden toast cut into fun shapes, fresh fruit arranged like colorful flowers, and the famous pancakes, this time in the shape of a heart, especially for Maggie. The aroma of homemade food filled the entire house, creating a welcoming atmosphere the mansion had never experienced before. "What a wonderful smell," Maggie said when she came down for breakfast, leaning on Hannah's arm. "Did someone become a chef in my absence?" "Daddy is cooking for you, Grandma," Mia announced proudly, running to take Maggie's free hand. "He learned how to make heart-shaped pancakes just for today," Charlotte added. Maggie sat at the kitchen table, not the formal one in the dining room, but the simple table where the family truly gathered. Nathan placed the plate in front of her with the proud ceremony of a chef presenting his masterpiece. "Nathan, my dear," Maggie said, her eyes misty with emotion, "you didn't have to go to all this trouble." "It's not trouble when it's done with love," he replied, sitting down beside her. During breakfast, which stretched for nearly 2 hours, Maggie told stories of when Nathan was little, making the girls laugh with tales of his childhood antics. "Your daddy once tried to make pancakes by himself when he was 8, Maggie recounted between laughs. "He wanted to surprise me for my birthday. I wake up in the morning and go to the kitchen, and there was batter even on the ceiling." "On the ceiling?" Mia asked in disbelief. "On the ceiling. The kitchen looked like a battlefield. There was flour on the curtains, broken eggs on the floor, spilled milk everywhere." Nathan laughed, vaguely remembering the incident. "But you weren't mad." "How could I be mad? You did it with so much love. We cleaned everything up together, laughing the whole time, and then we went to buy pancakes from the bakery." These stories became a precious part of their weekends. The girls loved hearing about their father when he was their age, and Nathan rediscovered parts of himself he had forgotten. After breakfast, a routine that everyone looked forward to was established. Mia and Charlotte always had new drawings to show Grandma Maggie. They would create works especially for her during the school days, carefully saving them for the weekend presentation. "Grandma, look what I made." Mia ran across the living room, holding a colorful drawing of a large family holding hands in front of a huge house. "It's all of us. Look, you're right here in the middle." Maggie took the drawing with the reverence of someone receiving a priceless work of art. She studied every detail with genuine attention. "How beautiful, my dear. Can I keep it in my room? I'll hang it on the wall so I can see it every day." "Of course, I made it especially for you." Charlotte was not to be outdone. Her drawings were more detailed, often accompanied by little stories she wrote in her still shaky but determined handwriting. "This drawing tells the story of a grandma who came to live with a family and brought everyone a lot of joy," Charlotte explained seriously. "See? Here she's singing, here she's making cookies, and here she's telling stories." Maggie studied each drawing with the attention of a professional art critic, praising techniques and creativity with touching sincerity. She had turned an entire wall of her room into a personal gallery, where she carefully hung every piece of art she received. Hannah observed these daily interactions, with a joy that shone through in every gesture. Seeing her mother not just medically stable, but truly happy and integrated into a loving family, was more than she had ever dared to dream. "Nathan," Hannah said on a Sunday afternoon, while the girls and Maggie were in the living room doing a puzzle, "I need to thank you for all of this." "For what, Hannah?" "For giving my mother a real family, for giving her a real purpose, people to love and care for again." Hannah discreetly wiped away a tear. "I haven't seen my mother this well in many years." Nathan looked into the living room, where Maggie was laughing at something funny Charlotte had said. "She gave me a family too, Hannah, a real, complete family, full of love." Maggie's presence had transformed the dynamic of the entire house. The staff smiled more spontaneously. Conversations during meals were livelier, and there was a tangible sense of completeness that had never existed before. "Mr. Carter," said Maria, the housekeeper who had worked in the house for 15 years, "I have never seen this mansion so full of real life." "What do you mean, Maria?" "Before, it was a beautiful house, but always quiet and a bit empty. Now it's a real home." There's laughter echoing through the halls, stories being told in the kitchen, genuine love in every corner. Maria was absolutely right. The once cold house was now full of life. The most special moment of all the weekends happened in the garden. It was a sunny spring Saturday when Nathan realized he had found the perfect definition of happiness. They were all in the garden after a delicious lunch that Nathan had prepared with the girls' help. He had spread a large blanket under the shade of the century-old oak tree, and Maggie was sitting comfortably in a cushioned chair. "What a beautiful, perfect day," Maggie commented with satisfaction, closing her eyes and feeling the gentle spring breeze on her face. The girls were playing nearby on the green grass, inventing an elaborate dance that matched the classical music, playing softly on a portable radio. Hannah was reading a novel on the blanket, relaxed. It was then that Maggie began to hum. Softly at first, almost to herself, but gradually her voice became clearer, more melodious. It was the special lullaby she used to sing to Nathan as a child, the sweet melody that connected them all through time, memory, and unconditional love. Mia and Charlotte stopped playing immediately, as if called by a magical tune. They approached Maggie with reverence and spontaneously began to dance in graceful circles around her chair. The girls twirled hand in hand, their blonde hair shining like gold in the golden afternoon sun, their radiant smiles reflecting the pure joy of the moment. Maggie continued to sing, her voice filled with deep love, precious memories, and absolute contentment. Nathan was sitting on the blanket, watching the scene with eyes welling up with emotion. It was a moment of absolute perfection. The people he loved most in the world were here, together, creating a memory he would cherish forever. The girls' dance was free and natural, full of the spontaneity that only children possess. They invented steps on the spot, spun with their arms outstretched, laughed with genuine joy, and Maggie followed them with a gaze full of infinite tenderness. Nathan felt a tear run down his face, but it was pure joy, absolute gratitude, unconditional love overflowing. Everything he had ever sought in life was right there, in that garden, in that perfect moment. When the song ended softly, the girls ran to hug Maggie, who received them with open arms and a radiant smile. "Nathan," Maggie called to him affectionately, extending her free hand in his direction. He approached without rushing and knelt respectfully beside her chair. Maggie touched his face with her usual gentleness, just as she did when he was a child. "There now, my boy," she said, her voice filled with deep satisfaction and maternal pride. "You have a happy family." Nathan held her hand carefully, feeling the emotional weight and crystal-clear truth of those simple words. "I do, and it's all thanks to you, Maggie." "No, dear, it's thanks to the love you chose to give and receive. It's thanks to the courage you had to change." Nathan looked around with gratitude, at Mia and Charlotte playing carefree on the grass, at Hannah smiling with contentment, at Maggie with her eyes shining with genuine joy, That was exactly it. A happy family. Not perfect, but deeply united by genuine love and constant presence. In that transcendent moment, sitting in the garden of the mansion that had once been just an empty house, Nathan fully understood what Maggie had always tried to teach him. Real success wasn't measured in money or professional achievements.